Hello, everyone. This is Ted Czech, Public Relations Manager for the International Foundation for Protection Officers. I'm here with Finbarr McCarthy. He is from Ireland, and he's a long time. He's been involved in the security industry for a long time in Ireland, Finbarr. And also you're on the advisory board for the IFPO UK in Ireland. So welcome.
Thanks, Ted.
Yeah.
Glad to be here. Looking forward to chatting with you over the next 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, great. Yep. So I just thought because you are involved, it'd be a good idea to kind of introduce you to folks in the UK are familiar with you, but elsewhere they might not be. So I just thought it would be a good idea to introduce you to everyone else and to kind of find out a little bit about what makes you tick and how you feel about the industry and things like that. So yeah, I took a look at your LinkedIn profile, and you've held numerous jobs in the industry. But how did you get your start? What kind of motivated you to get involved in the security industry?
It's 30 years this year since I started in the industry. So I'm a bit of a dinosaur as far as the Irish security industry goes. I suppose, like most people, the security industry was a waypoint for me on the way to somewhere else. Um, back in the early 90s, I would have originally wanted to be a police officer, but believe it or not, here in Ireland back then we had a height restriction. So I missed out on the police force by about an eighth of an inch if I used imperial. So they were very strict on it back then. It's since been removed, but that prevented me from going into law enforcement. So that's how I got into the security environment. I suppose I got in as a store detective, started working as a store detective in retail, and that started my journey within the industry.
Yeah, I guess here in the States, we sometimes we refer to it as store detective or loss prevention. I think it's probably similar, where you're in charge of the security for a particular store, and you might just be in plain clothes, kind of blending in, and you've got an eye out for anybody that might be up to anything. Whether it's theft, probably is the most common thing, but and I hear that is kind of one of the entry level positions, I would say, in the security industry. You can go that route, or like I did. I was stationed at a hospital, so I was at the triage area where patients were being brought in, and sometimes out in the parking lots, taking care of looking after the vehicles and the employees and stuff like that. But how did you so you got that position, and then what was your next move from there, and how long did it take you? How many years did it take you?
So again, working in the security industry, I was way over my head when I got in. I didn't know what to expect. I was put working a couple of stores in the local city where I live on the outskirts of, and pretty quickly I realized that when you're working in a loss prevention role, you end up having to investigate theft, arrest people, and eventually end up in the court process. So I realized pretty quickly that I needed more information. All right, I needed a better understanding of what I was doing, and this was a time in Ireland when we didn't have the regulated environment we have today. So there was no licenses. We didn't have to go through any formal training to become a security officer. You just got employed. So back then that's when I started my education journey with the Security Institute of Ireland. They were holding a course in advanced security studies. And one of the modules was criminal law, which really interested me because, hey, it was what I was doing on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
And once I actually got that certification, which again was way above my pay grade for the role I was actually doing. It just gave me this level of confidence, knowing that I understood where the lines were drawn, what side of the law I was standing on, how far I could push the envelope. And it meant that when I got into court situations, I understood the rules of evidence. I understood the legal jargon that was being thrown around the courtroom. And so I spent a lot of time in and out of courtrooms, and was pretty successful at it. But again, it wasn't something that I was hugely passionate about. And I did get an opportunity then at the time to work for, which was one of the premier brands in the industry, a company called Securicor, which was eventually it merged with G4S. I think it's actually I think that's where the S came from in G4S, right? But they work predominantly within the cash in transit and static officer environment. So I started working static guarding work, which I loved. It was really interesting. Doing all that other stuff you just mentioned, right? You get to engage in a very different way with the public. You get to help people as opposed to catch them, right? And that I was passionate about helping people. I really enjoyed helping people, and I was really interested in the work. And I again was really interested in the cash in transit side of it. So I leveraged some of my relationships with leadership within the company to get transferred to the head office, which was in Dublin. I was out in the sticks, and I took up a job there within the head office in the control center for all of the cash in transit for the country. And I learned the business from there. And I started off with the glorious job of sweeping floors and making coffee for the guys in the control room.
That's like bottom rung right there.
but an absolutely fantastic place to start, because without any pressure, I got to see how everybody's job worked. I got to see how the business was run. And as people took vacation, went on sick leave, put my hand up and said, hey, I'll give that a go. And I learned the business, and an opportunity came up back at home, and I ended up a couple of years later transferring back home and running the operation in my local city. So I was managing, a half dozen cash and transit vehicles and about 60 or 70 static guards. So that was my first job getting into management. And it was at that point that the Security Institute certification that I had gotten several years earlier actually came into play, because now I was starting my role in management and I had the certification in advance. So that was a really important step.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, so just a couple of definitions for those who might not be familiar. Static, when you talk about static work, are you referring to, say, like an officer who might be stationed at a desk, and folks are coming into a building, something like that, or you're in a shack, guard shack somewhere in like allowing entry, anything like that?
Yeah, it's a uniform position where you're normally working on large sites that would be industrial. So you could be a manufacturing site, could be pharma, something along those lines. And you're normally in uniform, and you're at the front of house, or you're at the back of house at good in or good entry, and so on and so forth. Okay. So a lot of what you're doing is you're working a control environment. So you could be in the guard shack, you might be behind the reception desk, you may be on patrol, but it is that uniform position.
So yeah, and a lot of interaction with other people, like you were saying, helping people. So a lot of interaction there. And then the other thing you mentioned, cash in transit. I think over here in the States, we might call that like armored car delivery. It's like a Brinks truck. We have them over here. But yeah, where you might see them going to various businesses, and then banks, and then ATMs, cash machines, things like that.
That's
what that is.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure. Um, so you mentioned some major moves in your career. Did you have anybody along the way to help you out? Some mentors that kind of shaped your career?
Yeah, again, it was really interesting because 30 years ago, I wouldn't even know what the word mentor meant.
Mm,
It was again an unregulated environment. There were people who were very good at what they did within the industry.
mm,
And I suppose we would call them mentors today, but back then, you sought out people who were good at what they did,
mm,
and you tried to replicate what they would do. And if you could get time with them, get a coffee, if you were lucky, you get to work with some of them, and you just watch, you learn, and you replicate.
mm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and when you look at today, the way mentorship has become a huge element of what we do in the security industry, it's now there are formal paths to getting that engagement and talking to people and getting those learning opportunities from people within the industry. But back then it was more difficult to build those relationships because there
Mm.
were no formal pathways that you could follow to reach out to individuals. Again, there was no LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
and
Yep.
for a lot of the younger members of the IFPO that are watching this, there were no cell phones.
Mm.
All right, so it was a very different world back then. So there was
Right.
no Facebook, there was no LinkedIn. To communicate with these people, you had to go see them, and a lot of times you only met these people when incidents happened, and
Mm.
then you had to try and soak up that knowledge while you had exposure during that incident, because you
Mm.
mightn't see them again for a year or 2 years
Hmm.
before you'd have an opportunity again to tap into that information flow.
But it sounds like it was instinct. Like you kind of knew, hey, this is a guy who's very experienced. He's knowledgeable. I better, somehow in some way connect with this guy, man or woman. I gotta, get close to this person because I'm gonna
Yeah,
need this knowledge. This is gonna help me.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly it. I mean, it's that intuition, and you realize that you're calling somebody in for support because you don't have a skill set that they're going to provide. So, you're going to watch and you're going to learn best you can, so that the next time you find yourself in that particular hole, at least you've got yourself a shovel, right?
There you go. And
Mm,
and you mentioned the institute. You're talking about an institute in Ireland.
mhm.
Uh, is that would it be considered like a college or university or somewhere in between, like a high school and a college? Can you describe that?
Yeah, it's actually it's very similar to the IFPO from the perspective of it's a body that is created to cater for security professionals so that
Hmm.
we can become certified within the Irish environment. It also provides us with educational opportunities, so they have particular specific trainings that they provide. And they also create a network of security professionals across Ireland as well, so
Hmm.
that we can engage with each other and learn from each other as well.
Hmm. And yeah, so you developed. It sounds like you developed in addition to mentors, another way to gain that knowledge was through things like the institute. And then when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, as a lot of folks in the industry do, they are proud of the certifications and degrees that they've achieved, so they put them after their name. And then I think a lot of people in the IFPO will recognize the CPOI, Certified Protection Officer Instructor. You have that, but then you've got some other things that, at least here in the States, I don't know if people, including myself, would be familiar with. I don't know if you say DIP or DIP FC Psych.
Mhm.
There's that, and then the FISRM, and then the MSEC 2. What is all that?
Yeah. So again, I think it is somewhat unique to Europe that when we engage in learning and training and membership, they do come with post-nominals, and that allows us to identify like-minded professionals within the industry and people who have reached a particular standard within the industry. And CPOI is one. Another one, you guys in the US will be familiar with, is the CPP. So you have those particular post-nominals you'd recognize. And again, for me, the ones that are most important are, you mentioned there the FIRSM. I'm a fellow of the Institute of Strategic Risk Management, and MSEC-II is a member of the Security Institute of Ireland, and my CPP denotes that I'm a member of ACIS as well. And for me, they're the really important ones, because when people see those post-nominals, they actually know, okay, Finbarr is a member of this particular group that Ted is also a member of. So we've got a common link that we can get together and we can start sharing information. Same with being a member of ACIS, doing the certification to CPP, it provides me with an opportunity to connect to other CPPs across the globe. And again, so a lot of the post-nominals would be in reference to different groups that I'm engaged with. Others would be for certifications that I've achieved. But the important ones are letting people know that I'm part of these groups, so that we can exchange knowledge and we can partner together and solve problems.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I after 25 years as a journalist, I made the transition to emergency management. And that's just opened up a whole new world for me. And so there's all these various certifications that that my director wants me to pursue through, like, say, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and other there's other ones beyond that, or aside from that. So yeah, I just in emergency management, I see the parallel between emergency management and security, in that that just kind of always having that thirst for knowledge, that pursuit of knowledge, that really never ends.
Absolutely, and I think, and again, it's one of the single biggest influencers in developing, and for me, developing my career within the industry is engaging with the industry and engaging with people within the industry. No man is an island, right? You can only get so far. You only know what you know. And by engaging with these associations and the individuals who are part of these associations, you start to realize just how much you don't know. But then you have avenues then to learn, and where you can pull from for that information and that knowledge. So that's important.
And here you are, 30 years on. You're the director of Workday. Maybe for folks who don't know, what is Workday, and what do you do for them as a director?
So predominantly we create software in the cloud, and my role as a director of global workplace safety, I manage the physical security operations across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So you'll see this again with a lot of Europeans. We have this EMEA written after. So we cover Europe, the Middle East, and Africa would be the areas of control that we would manage. So yeah, I work on developing the physical security operations, the physical security program, and rolling that program out then across all of our operational spaces within the region. So similar to what I've done at other companies, like Amazon and Dell and UPS, and these other brands that you would be familiar with. It's again, developing those skills so that you can go into different industries and you can support different industries, and apply the same skill set to those different technologies and different environments in which you're working, to create the safe working environments we want for our employees.
And so you had mentioned previously about helping people. There you are, and it's in kind of a different milieu from static security officer, but you're still helping people. And is that what keeps you motivated? 3 decades in the security industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. If your goal is to help people, you're going to start searching for new ways to do that and new knowledge to do that and to support people and to, create the best security product you can.
Mhm.
And by doing that, I know that, every day when I finish work, I've helped keep somebody safe somewhere.
Mhm.
The policy that we've written or the physical security design we've created, that has helped to keep somebody safe somewhere at one of our sites, regardless of which company I worked for. It was the same outcome.
Mhm.
I knew that by doing my job to the very best of my ability would help to prevent an accident or an incident for one of those people that I'm there to protect.
Great. So, the IFPO, the reason why we're here today, our connection.
Yeah.
You're on the advisory board for the IFPO UK and Ireland. How did that all come about? How did you get connected? How did you find out about the IFPO, and how did you get on the board?
Yeah, so again, it goes back again to, as I mentioned earlier, about these the industry groups that I'm part of. And when you look at some of the industry groups I'm part of, and ACES would be one. You would have the ISRM, as we've mentioned, and so on. These particular industry bodies are very necessary and provide a huge service to the industry, but they're targeted at the kind of mid to senior level security professionals.
Mm.
And what was really interesting for me was that the IFPO, it targeted from the other end up. So it looks
Ah.
at the security officer on the ground and how we make a better security product for that security officer.
Mhm.
And, again, after 30 years working in the industry and having, served the hard days and nights working in the static environment, the one thing that has stayed with me for the last 30 years is the hard work that goes into being a security officer. That
Mhm.
is that is not an easy job.
Right.
And what makes it all the more difficult is that as an industry, we don't provide a lot of support and educational opportunities at that level for security officers. And that's why I'm really interested, because I want to make sure that we have a source of security officers, a pipeline of security officers coming into the industry who, through education and certification, can demonstrate their value to their employers and to other potential employers,
Right.
and to give them pathways to get from, as I did, from the front door as a store detective into those management level roles. And that's where I saw that there's this natural progression from the IFPO certification, CPO, CSSM, right through to the CPP. Two different organizations,
Mhm.
from ACES and the IFPO, but the journey that it provides. And along the way, those professional certifications can then be underpinned with academic certification that you can receive through your colleges and through your universities. But I think having that starting point is really important because, having come through the security industry myself, the one thing that you note is that the security industry, a lot of people wind up in it. They don't go looking for it.
Mm. Mhm.
And they're there for a majority of reasons. And I, like, a lot of the people that I would have joined with the industry 30 years ago were there because I came into it with my own learning baggage. We all have, our own challenges within our learning abilities, and I brought my own to the table. And as I worked through the industry, I found so many people came to the industry because it was a way to fly under the radar. They didn't have to have computer skills. They didn't have to
Ah.
have strong literacy skills. They didn't have to write lengthy essays and reports. That's what the supervisors do.
Mhm.
They're front of house, they're out front, they're doing patrols, doing the hard graft, but they didn't have to engage, intensively in, the writing reports and using of computers.
Mhm.
And over the years, I saw a lot of people like that, and you recognize them because you can see your own challenges in their own in them as they're working their way through the industry.
Yeah.
And that is one of the, and you asked what keeps me passionate about it. And after 30 years, I feel that this is where I should be right now, is giving back to those people and showing them how to work through the industry and how to get from where they are today with their own challenges, and how they can then still work their way through the industry and become certified and give them confidence to get back into personal development. I think that's really important for us that have been at this game for a long time, is that we start paying it forward and giving back to our industries.
Yeah, and so how is that manifested in your involvement with the IFPO UK and Ireland on the advisory board?
Yeah.
Are you like tell me how that's how you do
So
that?
so the first thing I did was I sat both the CPO and the CSSM exams.
Mm,
I wanted to see what the content was, and I wanted to understand, if this was something that I really wanted to get engaged with and support, because I needed it to be something that I could get behind and I could, champion for those members of the security industry who, are not ever going to end up with a college degree, or that they're not going to take that jump into 3 or 4 years of college.
mm-hmm,
And looking at the exam type, and it was really interesting, and part of the area of study that they've gone into over the years is adult learning, and particularly the barriers to adult learning. And again, from my experience in the industry, I can see that a lot of people exit the education system very early on, and they have no confidence when it comes to getting back into the industry at a later stage in their life, when they're fully formed adults. And when I looked at the exam type and the scheduling of the skills like the CPO, they're you pace yourself, you learn at your own rate,
mm-hmm,
and the exam type is multiple choice,
right.
which means that you're not forced to sit a 3,000-word essay, or a 1,500-word essay, and do maybe 4 or 5 of those to pass the exam. You get the opportunity to go in there, you read the book, ask questions, you contact advisory board members for support, and then you go sit the exam. It's you and a pencil and multiple choice questions. And again, it is a professional certification as opposed to an academic certification, but it's the confidence that passing that exam can give to a person to go to the next level. Because
Yeah.
if your first engagement after 20 years with education is sit in a classroom, listen to this guy, and then go write a 5,000-word essay, it's not going to happen.
Mm.
But if you can go in and you can learn at your own pace, and you can take on an exam that's multiple choice, you come out of there, you pass the exam, you now have that confidence built that will take you to potentially the CSSM, or it will get you back into the hunger for learning, and you may actually take on one of those certifications that's more academic and get you into the exam writing. But it's all about getting people back on the ladder, getting
Mm-hmm.
them to take that first step into education. And that's where I see the IFPO having this huge, huge influence and benefit for security officers on the ground, as it gets them back into the education process.
Mm-hmm.
And then from where they go from there, it's the sky is the limit. But getting them back in the door and learning, that's what I'm passionate about. That's why I want to be part of the advisory board and why I want to be part of the IFPO.
Gotcha. So you over 3 decades, you've probably seen a lot of changes in the industry. And you mentioned, if I understood you correctly, that a lot of people kind of were falling into security rather than actually making a point to pursue it, like
Mm.
wanting to be a security officer and seeing security as a profession,
Mhm.
as something that you could make a career out of. Are
Mhm.
you seeing a change, that people are starting to do more of that they're starting to see security as a career, as a profession, that they can,
Mhm.
move up and diversify and really make something of it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely over the last 10 years here in Ireland in particular, maybe 10 to 15 years, there's been a huge change in the way the industry operates. Licensing has come in
Mm,
since the early noughties, and that has really puts a lot of structure around the industry. And we have these unofficial transitions from the police force and the military into the security field. So that over the last kind of 10 or 15 years has brought this huge wealth of knowledge
mm,
uh, into the security industry. Again, diversifying it, providing different avenues of growth within the security operations world. And the colleges here now are offering some really strong courses of criminal justice and so on and so forth. So that all feeds into people taking on those roles and seeing security as a viable career.
mhm,
And in Ireland, where again we punch so far above our weight from the perspective of the type of roles in security that we have. I mean, when you look around the country here, we have representation of, I think it's 11 out of the top 13 pharma companies in the world
mm.
have their regional offices here.
Oh, wow.
Again, you look at all the big names, Microsoft, Intel, Dell, they all have their regional offices here. So there's
Oh.
there's a lot of senior leaders here in Ireland within these companies. So we have that structure. We have career paths where you can go from officer to manager right up to director level and above within Ireland. So
Mhm,
it's actually really strong to see the type of people that are coming into the industry here and working through it. So yeah, it definitely, the industry has professionalized hugely over the last 15 years or so, and it's stronger for it. And there are some great people coming into the pipeline and young professionals. But we need to keep that going and keep that growing.
mhm. You mentioned, people who, it sounded like transition from law enforcement and military to security. Um, are you, over here in the States, we've had it's kind of unfortunate where the number of police officers is decreasing, across the country, where the number of security officers is increasing. So we're seeing more security officers, and we're seeing that in certain areas they're being given more powers, powers of arrest and things like that. Kind of a quasi, acting as a quasi law enforcement type of department. Is
Mm.
that happening over in Ireland as well?
Not so much in Ireland. We are. I think it's a global phenomenon at the moment
Mm,
where both the military and the police services are struggling to hire in,
mm,
and private security is growing.
mhm.
So I don't think that's unique to the US. I think we're seeing that
Oh,
right
okay.
across the globe.
It's
Um,
interesting.
and and we and again here in Ireland we don't see additional powers of arrest going to security officers.
Mm,
But I do see it, particularly in the UK, where you have particular security companies providing a quasi type police, Bobby on patrol type
mhm,
service in different areas and different parts of the country. And they're supplementing
right.
the police force. They don't have any additional powers. They don't have any additional rights of arrest, but just their presence alone is having an impact on
Mm,
criminality in those areas. And we see it in Dublin as well. We would have a lot of security patrols where different associations and residents groups and so on would, contract out security
Yeah.
services to manage particular areas of the city or the financial areas of the city and so on. So we're seeing a lot more of that, as the, again, the police and military are seeing challenges in their recruitment processes. But as for increased powers of arrest, that would be challenging here, on this
Okay.
side of the.
Gotcha. What about here's another trend, robots.
Mm.
I go to the local grocery store, and there's a robot that kind of just, I mean, it's not there for security really, I don't think. It might be outfitted with a camera, I'm not sure, but it just kind of roams up and down the aisles. But you hear about security robots,
Mm.
and a few years ago there was I guess it became a meme where it was a security robot that fell into like a fountain. So it was
Mm.
kind of drowning in the water or whatever. So
Mm.
it kind of became a laughing stock. But do you see and so what I've heard is, some people are like, well, it's not going to replace human beings, but it can supplement. What are your thoughts on security robots?
Yeah, I think, you know, I- and I worked for Amazon, right? And you know, the technology that Amazon uses and how it puts that technology to use is phenomenal. But they still need people. It's still one of the biggest employers of people in the world,
Mm,
yet it's one of the biggest users of technology
right.
and robots. So I think from a security perspective, we've seen this. I mean, I when I started off, I would stand at night minding a hole in the ground so no one would fall into it. That was my job.
Hmm.
And then many years later, they brought along these towers with, 3G capabilities, cameras on them, lighting, and so on. So some guy in a control room 100 miles away could monitor the hole in the ground. So I didn't need to be there anymore. I didn't want to be looking after a hole in the ground. It was a horrible job. All right. So what we see is that the technology is improving the standards,
Mm,
for officers. It's improving the roles that we can have. The flip side of that is we need to stay up to date with the use of the technology, how
mm,
to use the computers, what AI is, how it will impact us. So I think we do need to upskill, but I don't see a point at which our security officers will disappear from the streets.
mm.
Again, the technology is great, but I mean, that those the intuition, the gut feelings, the smile,
Right.
technology
Right.
can't replace that. And,
The
again,
human touch, yeah, the human touch.
exactly. I mean, when people see a uniform, they feel safe.
Mm,
And that's a human thing, right? And we see that, and there's that sense of safety there. But I
mm,
think, yes, I think what we will be doing in 10 years will be different. I think how we will be doing it will be different,
mm.
but it's not going to suddenly replace us. I think that there's always going to be a place on the ground for security officers. It's just that role might be very different in 10 to 15 years' time, but we'll still be required.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, it was like what I used to say when I was a journalist. Well, the news isn't going to report itself.
Mm.
There's always going to be a need for reporters. Now, here in the States, the a lot of the newsrooms, and I know newspapers the best. So newspaper newsrooms have been gutted because they're losing money. But now we see the rise of citizen journalists. So
Mm.
there's always going to be a need to report the news. The news doesn't report itself. So I see what you're saying there with security. What would be your advice to younger people who maybe they're finishing high school, they're considering career paths, and security might be one of them, or maybe they're not going to go into college, maybe they just want to jump right into the industry. What would be
Mm.
some words of advice from you to those people?
But if I look back at the 30 years ago version of me, and what I would have liked to see it. And that would have been, I would have liked to have had the opportunity to talk to people who are in the industry, in
Mm,
different roles within the industry, because unfortunately, a lot of people only see one face of our industry, and that is the security officer in the store, or the night watchman with the flashlight, right?
mhm,
And but we have such an amazing diversity of roles within the industry. I think that's the first piece, that we need to be able to encourage young people to get engaged with us within the industry, and to get information out there and show them, that you can actually join the security industry and see the world, that
mhm.
it's an amazing career. It's no longer join the military and see the world. You can do that with the security industry.
Ah,
Um, again, and I said this a number of times tonight, it's been, networking, the
yeah,
association,
very important.
meeting people. And that's really, really important, that you have those opportunities to network and to engage. And, the education piece is really important when you're in the industry. But I think there is a something I've looked at recently, which really surprised me, is that LinkedIn is a fantastic tool. And, that is, I would definitely point people towards LinkedIn. But it's really interesting that a lot of security officers don't engage in LinkedIn. They tend to use other medium, Facebook and so on and so forth.
Mhm,
But again, I would encourage people to get onto LinkedIn, follow those thought leaders within the different segments of the industry, get to learn more about it, and then you can actually, engage with those people and their networks and learn more about the industry. So again, it's about networking, it's about using the tools that are there, and just talking to people. That's
mhm.
what my advice would be, is just get out there and talk to people. It's a fantastic, fantastic industry, fantastic career choice.
And it's one that well, I think the other stigma is that you can't make any money in it,
Mm.
um, and yeah, entry level, that might be difficult, but because okay, I'll just take me. So probably around the time that you started, in the early to mid '90s, yeah, I was a security officer and I was making $6 an hour, but I was also going to school at night. Um, so, but I think as you climb, as you progress in the security industry, you can find a way to support yourself. You'll have opportunities as you continue to educate yourself and things like that, right? To make more money.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I mean, if you look at any other apprenticeship or any other role, nobody comes straight in on 100 grand a year, right?
Mm,
You have to start at the bottom, learn the business, and then you take the opportunities. You go out there, you look for the opportunities, and you grow. And that's and then you get into the mainstream environment, and that's how you make a decent living from the security industry.
mhm.
But you know you've got to write off the first couple of years to your apprenticeship, right? You've got to
Right,
learn
right.
the business, and you need to go in with your eyes wide open. That if you're coming in from the bottom, just whether you're in retail, sales, you got to start somewhere and learn the business.
Right.
But then once you're in the door, then it's on you to make those choices, go after what it is you want, and commit to the industry, and take those risks and go after those roles. And then you can make a decent living in security, just like you can in any other sector.
There you go. Yeah, that's the thing that I think we need to uh one of the things that we need to impress upon people is you know you if you work hard, you apply yourself, you're smart about it, you network, you can get somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
And beyond the fact that it can be very fulfilling.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean totally. I mean, again, the same thing motivates me today as it did 30 years ago, and that's helping people.
Mhm.
You know, and now I'm helping people both in keeping them safe, but I'm also helping people to grow in their careers. So, you know, it's you know, you get out of it what you put into it.
Mhm.
It's a fantastic career, but it's very much you get out of it what you put into it.
Great. Well, Finbarr, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I feel certain that that this is going to be inspirational to a lot of people. And yeah, please keep doing what you're doing over there in the UK and Ireland. It's very much appreciated. Um,
Super.
and yeah,
Thanks, Brian.
look
Appreciate the
forward
chat.
to staying in touch with you and connecting on LinkedIn and and stuff like that. So thanks again.
Great. Great chatting with you, Ted. Take care.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.